بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين، والصلاة والسلام على المبعوث رحمة للعالمين سيدنا مولانا محمد عليه وعلى آله أفضل الصلاة وأتم التسليم. Welcome back to Quran Journey. I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to accept from all of us and to make this a beautiful, productive, fruitful reminder. Ya Rabb, Ameen. We'll begin inshallah with the recitation of the ayat, jumping then straight into the analysis and discussion. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. ومن آياته أن تقوم السماء والأرض بأمره ثم إذا دعاكم دعوة من الأرض إذا أنتم تخرجون وله من في السماوات والأرض كل له قانتون وهو الذي يبدأ الخلق ثم يعيده وهو أهون عليه وله المثل الأعلى في السماوات والأرض وهو العزيز الحكيم. ضرب لكم مثلا من أنفسكم هل لكم مما ملكت أيمانكم من شركاء فيما رزقناكم فأنتم فيه سواء تخافونهم كخيفتكم أنفسكم كذلك نفصل الآيات لقوم يعقلون. بل اتبع الذين ظلموا أهواءهم بغير علم فمن يهدي من أضل الله وما لهم من ناصرين. فأقم وجهك للدين حنيفا فطرة الله التي فطر الناس عليها لا تبديل لخلق الله ذلك الدين القيم ولكن أكثر الناس لا يعلمون. منيبين إليه واتقوه وأقيموا الصلاة ولا تكونوا من المشركين من الذين فرقوا دينهم وكانوا شيعا كل حزب بما لديهم فرحون. وإذا مس الناس ضر دعوا ربهم منيبين إليه ثم إذا أذاقهم منه رحمة إذا فريق منهم بربهم يشركون ليكفروا بما آتيناهم فتمتعوا فسوف تعلمون. أم أنزلنا عليهم سلطانا فهو يتكلم بما كانوا به يشركون وإذا أذقنا الناس رحمة فرحوا بها وإن تصبهم سيئة بما قدمت أيديهم إذا هم يقنطون أولم يروا أن الله يبسط الرزق لمن يشاء ويقدر إن في ذلك لآيات لقوم يؤمنون فآت ذا القربى حقه والمسكين وابن السبيل ذلك خير للذين يريدون وجه الله وأولئك هم المفلحون وما آتيتم من ربا ليربو في أموال الناس فلا يربو عند الله وما آتيتم من زكاة تريدون وجه الله فأولئك هم المضعفون الله الذي خلقكم ثم رزقكم ثم يميتكم ثم يحييكم هل من شركائكم من يفعل من ذلكم من شيء سبحانه وتعالى عما يشركون ظهر الفساد في البر والبحر بما كسبت أيدي الناس ليذيقهم بعض الذي عملوا لعلهم يرجعون. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على المبعوث رحمة للعالمين سيدنا مولانا محمد عليه وعلى آله أفضل الصلاة وأتم التسليم. We continue with the discussion of Surah Ar-Rum. The last time we looked at the various signs of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You're looking to reignite your relationship with Allah. You're looking to see the world from the perspective that Allah wills for you to see. Allah gives you steps by steps. He tells you in the ayat that we discussed last time, look at the cycles of life and death. Look at how the earth comes back to life. And in the same way, you too will come back to life. Look at how you're all created from dust. And then you are dispersed, the process of reproduction. So your source, dust, stardust, and then the process of reproduction. All of these things are meant to ignite your vision, your spiritual clarity, and allow you to see the way Allah wills for you to see the world, to see the signs and the miraculous power of Allah. Study psychology. Study the psychology of love. How two souls will long to be with one another. The expressive love and the compassion and the mercy, and how a relationship at the very beginning is rooted in love. And then at the end and towards, of course, even the middle, there's that mercy. And there's so much that can be taken from all of this. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is getting us to imagine and reflect on the various processes around us that will ignite our spiritual clarity. Some will say, mawadda wa rahma, you have love, expressive love, and you're compassionate in the way that you love. So you're not restricting, you're not limiting, but rather your love is empowering and freeing, not limiting and constricting. And إِنَّ فِي ذَلِكَ لَآيَاتٍ لِقَوْمٍ يَتَفَكَّرُونَ, all of these signs are going to be miracles for those who reflect. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is reminding you to reflect. Look at the process of the creation of the earth and the heavens and the differences in your languages, in your colors. So study linguistics, study the process through which human beings evolve and become independent but also related and relatives. So study genetics, right? Study geology. إِنَّ فِي ذَلِكَ لَآيَاتٍ لِلْعَالِمِينَ. In all of these are going to be signs for those who know, those who are actually looking to have sound knowledge. Study your sleep during the day, during the night. Study your rhythms. وَابْتِغَاءَكُم مِّن فَضْلِهِ. Study the process through which you seek to be productive, to make meaning, to contribute, to seek provisions throughout the day and the night. يُرِيكُمُ الْبَرْقَ خَوْفًا وَطَمَعًا. Study lightning, study the patterns around you in the heavens, study the cloud formation, and how lightning can actually induce fear but also induce hope. Study the way that cultures and societies make meaning out of these events that come from above. وَيُنَزِّلُ مِنَ السَّمَاءِ مَاءً. Study the process through which water comes down. Precipitation, evaporation, condensation, the water cycles. Study how the water itself will bring a dead ground back to life. Then, وَمِنْ آيَاتِ أَن تَقُومَ السَّمَاءُ وَالْأَرْضُ بِأَمْرِهِ. In the same manner that Allah is fully in control of the universe, and all of these processes indicate the presence of a designer, the presence of a coder, the presence of someone who is involved and powerful. Similarly, the entire earth and the heavens persist by His command, and eventually will all be resurrected again through His command. So the one who sustains all of this is the one who causes it to end and the one who causes it to come back to life. Just like everything else, ends and comes back to life. وَلَهُ مَنْ فِي السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ كُلُّ لَهُ قَانِتُونَ. And this being that is communicating to you through the Quran is the one who, to Him belongs all that is in the heavens and the earth, and all are subject to His will. Whether knowingly, whether unknowingly, whether willingly, whether unwillingly, all eventually subject their will to Him. And one of the ways that that happens is if you are following a specific code, if you're following a specific pattern, if you're following a specific cycle and rhythm, that is part of your will being subject to the will of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. وَهُوَ الَّذِي يَبَدَأُ الْخَلْقَ ثُمَّ يُعِيدُهُ. It is He who brings creation, and it's He who brings it back again. So imagine resurrection is repeated over and over again. Why? Because this was a major issue for the Arabs, for the original audience of the Quran, the first audience of the Quran. They had an issue with resurrection. How is it that we're able to, Jazakallah khair, how is it that we're able to die, and then after death we all come back to life? So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala addresses this. Through all of these signs, you will actually come to realize how very much this is a possibility, not only a possibility, but a reality. A reality. And then the example that is given to us here. The Quran is full of analogies, and this is where we start from today's class. ضَرَبَ لَكُم مَثَلًا مِنْ أَنفُسِكُم. Allah is going to give you an example based on your own experience. So here Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is speaking specifically to the Arabs because this is their social experience. So we know the Arabs, they had how many percentage, what was the percentage? How much percent, or how many percent were the tribal structures made up of slaves? So slaves made up how much of the population? 2/3. So 2/3 of the Arab societies at that time were consistent of slaves. So imagine this is the working class. This is the class that made all possible. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given them an example of that. Would you allow those that are captives or those that are slaves in your possession to be equal partners in whatever wealth you have? So imagine you yourself have this relationship with the slaves. You see yourself as owners of these slaves, even though this is not correct, and this is going to be challenged elsewhere in the Quran and in the Sunnah. But based on your experience, your social experience, would you expect yourself to treat or to be treated the same as someone in your possession? Would you expect to share your wealth with them? فَأَنْتُمْ فِي سَوَاءٍ. Would you expect equality or equity between you and them in your wealth? Imagine you share half of your wealth with them. Would you do that? No, why? Because you assume some form of superiority over them. You assume some form of control over them. Yet that control that you assume is completely what? Is completely made up. But the control of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is real. So you assume this control over your slave, over the people that you're in charge of. Why? Because you create it in your head. It's socially constructed. What power do you actually have? What power do you have? So you give yourself all these powers. You construct all of these hierarchies in your own lives, and you don't attribute power and accept the hierarchy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That you give power to yourself, possessive power to yourself, and you forget to actually acknowledge the possessive power of Allah who created. Imagine we're talking about the earth and the heavens and the stars and the oceans and the seas and all of these things that Allah created, and the cycles and the water cycles and the rhythms and sleep and the differences in language. All of these are expressive. They express the power of Allah, the capacity of Allah. So you don't accept that Allah is in control, even though you yourself socially construct control all the time. And this is subhanAllah, sometimes what happens is people they suspend their thinking, and they limit their thinking, and they don't apply the same kind of criteria to day-to-day life, to their social environment. Right? Like someone saying, why do you guys pray 5 times a day? And I had this conversation. There was one of our senior, she's a member of another community. She's not Muslim. So she's older. She's very animated, very kind lady. So she's saying, why do you guys Muslims pray 5 times a day? Isn't that too much? And then you think to yourself, yeah, how many times do you eat a day? How many times do you show up for work? Isn't that too much? Why do you choose to say, isn't that too much? Based on what? Right? Based on what? How many times do you laugh a day? How many breaths do you take a day? So we see this as an expression of gratitude to Allah for the gift of life. Right? So connecting and relating your experience to the day-to-day. Not kind of suspending. When it comes to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we don't relate to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the same way that we relate to everything else in life. And we accept, okay, this is the work. Why do you go to work every day? You just have to. It's part of life. So we take a lot of things for granted, and we don't apply the same criticality and maybe skepticism to everything in life. So at least be fair, be consistent. Be consistent. And if you start asking these questions consistently, you actually start to realize that Allah deserves more of my commitment and devotion and submission. Why do I submit to authority, but not Allah? Why do I submit to social contracts, but not to Allah? Why do I submit to schooling and educational systems and the taxation system, all of these systems that are in place that we've socially constructed, and we accept them when we take them as for granted because they have to be. We say that they serve some form of purpose. Sure. But at the same time, ultimate purpose, ultimate merit to be worshipped is Allah's. And when you start asking these questions deeper and actually unpacking them, you realize that Allah deserves to be worshipped, and He summarizes it in 2 words. أَلَا لَهُ الْخَلْقُ وَالْأَمْرُ تَبَارَكَ اللَّهُ. The one who creates khalq is the one who has the right to command. Right? The one who creates has the right to command. أَلَا لَهُ الْخَلْقُ وَالْأَمْرُ. Because imagine you create this phone. You're the creator of the phone. So you get to tell this phone what to do. You get to set the parameters. You get to say this phone does this purpose, it doesn't do that purpose. It has these parameters, it doesn't have these parameters. You design it with a specific function and a specific structure to enable and to make that function possible. So Allah is the one who created, therefore He is the one who has the right to set the boundaries of what is accepted in terms of form and what is accepted in terms of function. And we think like that all the time in every aspect, right? You have the sense of control, but we don't want to give Allah the control that He deserves. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala then says, فَأَنْتُمْ فِي سَوَاءٌ تَخَافُونَهُمْ كَخِيفَتِكُمْ أَنفُسَكُمْ. Would you keep them in mind as you are mindful of yourselves? Meaning, would you take care of them the way that you take care of your own children, the way that you would take care of your own self? So now Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is questioning, getting them to question the assumption. What gives you power over them? And why do you care less about them than you care about your own children, you care about your own selves? Why? Why are these structures in place to begin with? So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is getting them to redirect their criticality of structures towards the social structures that they have created. So it's as if the human being has a share of criticality, and that criticality needs to be directed towards productive means, or else it self-implodes and it causes doubt in your relationship with Allah, which is the most real and the most, again, if you're going to take anything for granted, it's that, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the source of everything. So you've reversed the equation. You take for granted what should not be taken for granted, and you're critical towards that which should actually be a self-evident truth. You've reversed the equation, and that leads to self-implosion. كَذَلِكَ نُفَصِّلُ الْآيَاتِ لِقَوْمٍ يَعْقِلُونَ. In this way, we make signs clear for the people who understand. You start to think. You start to get a sense of, how do I actually process? How does my cognition work? A bit of metacognition. I'm now aware of my biases. I'm aware of my prejudice in thinking. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives you the answer. Why is it that people accept certain social constructs and take them as, okay, just for granted? And then critical of others, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala answers in the next ayah. بَلِ اتَّبَعَ الَّذِينَ ظَلَمُوا أَهْوَاءَهُمْ بِغَيْرِ عِلْمٍ. They're just following the people who are ظَلَمُوا. They're unjust against themselves. They're unjust against others. What do? They follow their hawa. They follow their desire without knowledge. They follow their desire without knowledge. So people who just say, it's just the way things are. They just go with the flow. Hawa literally means the air. When you're light, you don't have foundations. You're picked up by the air and you go everywhere. You go with the flow. What is everybody doing? Let's just do that. What's the fad? What's the trend? I'm going to cut my hair the same way that everybody's cutting their hair. I'm going to dress the same way that everybody's dressed. I'm going to like whatever everybody else is liking. I'm going to speak, okay, now this is what's popular. This is now the new lingo. Okay, let's assume the new lingo. So this literally means, this is associated with hawa, that you're light, that you're picked up by the air, the wind, and you just go with wherever the current takes you, wherever the trend goes. But then what happens if you have roots? وَمَثَلُ كَلِمَةٍ طَيِّبَةٍ كَشَجَرَةٍ طَيِّبَةٍ أَصْلُهَا ثَابِتٌ وَفَرْعُهَا فِي السَّمَاءِ. If you have foundations, Allah says that a good tree is like a good word, or a good word is like a good tree. La ilaha illallah, the word La ilaha illallah is like a tree. So when you say La ilaha illallah, what happens? You become like a tree, a mature tree. Roots are deep, branches high. أصلها ثابت. So you're not going to be shaken. People are doing this, people are doing that. You're not going with the flow anymore. Why? Because you have foundations. You have roots. Those are the roots that become a part of who you are. They become a part of your existence. So La ilaha illallah is a heavy word, because what it means is, I'm not just committing to whatever the flow is. No, I'm committing to Allah. So I'm going to ask myself before I do anything, are my foundations strong? Is this in line with my values? Before I do anything, your branches are high. When you have high branches, but at the same time, تُؤْتِي أُكُلَهَا كُلَّ حِينٍ, the fruits are nearby. So when you have high branches, what does that mean? You have a self-respect. You don't have a low self-image. You're not looking to please. Right? But at the same time, your fruits are near, accessible, you're humble. So imagine, this is the Muslim. What an image. The Muslim has deep roots. I'm not just, I have deep thinking. I have a deep way of looking at the world. I don't just take things for granted, right? Before I make any decision. Why is it that when everybody gets married, people do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5? This is the social norm. It's just the way things are. Well, actually, no. We have a code that we live by. Let's go back to the Quran and the Sunnah. How are things meant to be? So I don't just do what everybody else is doing. I go back to the values. I have deep commitments. I have deep roots. And then branches are high. Respect. Respect. Self-image. A lot of the time people fall into sin because of insecurity. Because of insecurity. And subhanAllah, one of my counseling cases just a while ago, and I have the permission to share, without, of course, sharing too much information. This individual was saying, subhanAllah, I started to hate Allah because I started to say, why is it that Allah, وَلْتُصْنَعَ عَلَى عَيْنِي, this ayah in the Quran, you were framed under my watch. I protected you every minute. This person says, look, in my childhood, someone did something really, really bad to me. Some of the worst kinds of abuse you can imagine. Why wasn't Allah there to protect me? Why did Allah protect Musa? And why did Allah protect Yusuf? And why did Allah protect Isa? Why did Allah protect Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam? But why was I not protected? And maybe, and this is where shaitan comes in. He says, maybe I'm just not good enough. I'm not worthy of Allah's protection. And if I'm not good enough, then what's the point? And if I'm not good enough, then maybe I'm not meant for Jannah. So what? And where does all this, subhanAllah, when you have a conversation back and forth after some time, this person admits that I am aware when these thoughts are actually mine and when they're intrusive from outside. I am aware when these bad thoughts that you're not good enough, you'll never receive salvation, you were not good enough to receive the protection of Allah. Instead of framing this, I'm like, subhanAllah, bro, in the same conversation, you just mentioned Allah protected Yusuf, but what happened to Yusuf? What happened to Yusuf? Yusuf literally, imagine after being thrown into a well by his own brothers, family, your own family turns on you, your own brothers, jealousy, because you love your father and your father loves you for what? For what sin? Then you're thrown into a well, then you're sold into slavery after people find you, and then after that you're then tempted, and it's a form of physical abuse. At least intentionality-wise, a form of abuse. And then you're put into jail. And remember, before that, when he was tempted by this beautiful, powerful woman, what did he say? مَعَاذَ اللَّهِ إِنَّهُ رَبِّي أَحْسَنَ مَثْوَايَ. How dare I compromise the relationship that I have with the one who's been so good to me, Allah. So imagine, look what he says, Allah has been so good to me, how can I do this? So do you see that? Yusuf learned early on to separate the evil of people from the power of Allah. And shaitan wants us to take the evil of people and then superimpose that upon Allah. Bad happens because Allah lets it happen. And why does Allah let it happen? Because you're not good enough. And if you're not good enough, then what's the point? Don't try to go for Jannah. You're just as bad as me. You're just as bad as me. So self-image, self-respect, confidence. Shaitan will enter from any door. And then subhanAllah, then he says, I also went through a cycle and a phase where, imagine this, look at this, look how shaitan, subhanAllah, will swing the pendulum. You're not good enough. Then he was able to work through that, but eventually what happened? Shaitan entered. The same person, just a few maybe weeks later, shaitan entered from the door of, you're amazing. So he started to say, look, you know what? I'm going to confront this by the opposite. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pray and fast and become so dedicated that I want to be the best worshiper so I can become shaitan's worst enemy. And I want to have a karama with Allah where whatever dua I make, Allah answers. So I become the best worshiper. And subhanAllah here, what do you see what shaitan is doing? Shaitan is saying, because there's an assumption here, we don't notice, but the assumption here is shaitan is so powerful that I have to become equally powerful, if not more powerful, through Allah so that I'm able to confront shaitan. So I want to be the best worshiper so I can now reckon and compete with shaitan's power. I'm like, you have the whole equation wrong. Why do you have the whole equation wrong? Because now you've made it about power. You're trying to actually use Allah as a tool, a fuel to become more powerful. And it's not about power. The point of Islam is submission. You have the wrong focus. You're obsessing on shaitan. And what happens when you have that kind of obsession? It's like the suppression led to obsession kind of formula. You suppress. So I'm horrible. Now you go the opposite. Now you obsess with shaitan, and you want shaitan to be so powerless in your eyes. But that assumes that shaitan actually has power. You have the whole thing wrong. What should you actually focus on? Focus on Allah. Don't focus on shaitan. Submit to Allah. The language with Allah is humility, not power. Not, Ya Allah, I'm coming to you so I can wield and become the most powerful and have the most powerful dua. Yes, that happens. That happens. But that's not what you're seeking. What are you seeking? You're seeking Allah, not the power. And you know, when you actually start to wonder, am I worshiping Allah for Allah, or am I worshiping Allah for power? Am I now just becoming self-righteous? Am I worshiping Allah so I can feel better about myself? Am I saying no to temptation and desire so I can, have this better self-image? Which is true. You will have a better self-image. But what should the focus be? The focus should be Allah, not anything else. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala here says that most people, when they are unjust, they're following their own desires. They're trying to make up for low self-image or inferiority or this or that. And that's what's motivating that desire. But what does Allah say? فَمَنْ يَهْدِي مَنْ أَضَلَّ اللَّهِ. But if that person is far gone, they don't even know that they're far gone. Who can actually gift them guidance? Nobody but Allah. Nobody but Allah can bring that person out of that self-induced and very, very much unaware state of ghafla. State of ghafla meaning the state of unawareness. You're so far gone. You're so focused. You're locked in on something, pixels, that you forget the bigger picture. The image I give is the person, I gave this before, the person who's just stuck on their phone and they don't notice anybody else. People are talking to them and they can't notice. So there's a state of ghafla. They're watching something and they're so focused on that, they don't notice their surroundings. Right? And sometimes, imagine when somebody's lost in their own thoughts and you're talking to them and they're just nodding, and then after you realize they weren't even listening. Why? Because they're stuck focusing on something else. So ask yourself then, what desire, what is it that has me locked in, has me so focused that I'm just choosing to look at that and not anything else? And how can I then come out of that? By asking Allah for guidance. Ya Allah, allow me to wake up. Ya Allah, allow me to see things clearly. What is the dua that the Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam made often? Allahumma arina al-haqqa haqqan warzuqna ittiba'ah wa arina al-batila batilan warzuqna ijtinabah wa la takilna ila anfusina tarfat 'aynin fanadilla dhalalan ba'ida. He said, oh Allah, allow us to see truth as truth and give us the strength to follow it, and allow us to see falsehood as falsehood and give us the strength and the clarity to stay away from it. وَمَا لَهُم مِّن نَاصِرِينَ. There will be no victor, no helper, if Allah is not the one that you turn to. And is it a surprise then, the next ayah? What is the next ayah? فَأَقِمْ وَجْهَكَ لِلدِّينِ حَنِيفًا فِطْرَةَ اللَّهِ الَّتِي فَطَرَ النَّاسَ عَلَيْهَا لَا تَبْدِيلَ لِخَلْقِ اللَّهِ ذَلِكَ الدِّينُ الْقَيِّمُ وَلَكِنَّ أَكْثَرَ النَّاسِ لَا يَعْلَمُونَ. What a beautiful, beautiful ayah. So be steadfast in faith. فَأَقِمْ وَجْهَكَ. Let's translate literally. Aqim means to get up. Wajhaka, your face. Liddini hanifa. Get your face locked in, focused on. Your qibla, your orientation should be Liddini hanifa, to this way of life. Hanifa. Hanifan, discrediting or ignoring all other distractions. Literally to deviate. So society is saying, come this way. I'm like, no, I'm going to go this way. I'm going to stay on the path of Allah. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is literally commanding us, get your face up, aqim. Aqim, in order for you to actually resist the flow, what do you need? You need strong foundations. You need to be standing. So stand up. Stand up. and direct your face to the way of Allah. Hanifa, ready to resist all the temptation, all the wind, all the noise, all the distraction. So get your face focused on this deen, this way of life, this religion, this faith. فِطْرَةَ اللَّهِ الَّتِي فَطَرَ النَّاسَ عَلَيْهَا. And by doing so, you will actually rediscover your own natural way. Your fitrah. You will wake up your fitrah. You will wake up your innate natural state. You know, sometimes you wake up from imagine you're going through, let's say, a few years. Usually, the image that I give that many of us can relate to is like when you finish your degree. You've been 4 years in university or 5 years med school, 2 years of residency, then after that, or law school or accounting, and you just finished your education, you finally get your degree, you get your graduation certificate, and now you can breathe again. And you decide, you know what, I'm going to go for 2 months, just relax, travel the world. You take July and August off, you go for July and August, and then you come back September, you look at yourself in the mirror, and you ask yourself, what just happened? Who am I? What am I? What was I? And then you have all these existential moments because you were in the cycle for so long. You can all relate this to because we just finished university. But some people have the same awakening. When they go retirement, they look at themselves in the mirror after retiring and they're like, what just happened? Did I just literally give 35, 40 years of my life to this corporation that deserves nothing? Did I really just waste all, and you have all this realize that you wake up. And then you realize when you disconnect from it all, right? When you disconnect from it all, you look back and you realize how insignificant many of these things were. I'm not saying, again, schooling is not important, work is not important, but sometimes it is important. You need it. And Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam encouraged education, the Quran did as well, and you need to work. We're productive beings. But we have to also remember that when we're stuck looking at something for so long, we just accept it. And we accept what comes with it. And we don't want to look elsewhere. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying here literally, make Allah the focus of your eyes, the focus of your face, the focus of your direction. Because when you do that, you will have your fitrah in place. Your natural intuitive space, your natural intuitive state is not going to be compromised. فِطْرَةَ اللَّهِ الَّتِي فَطَرَ النَّاسَ عَلَيْهَا. This is the natural state that Allah created the human being in. To be good, to be giving, to be just, to be fair. But what happens? We focus so much on other things that we subdue, minimize, mute, and sometimes reconfigure the fitrah altogether. So the compass stops working. You don't have that clarity anymore. There was a moment in your life where hey, this is right, this is wrong. And it was so easy to say that. And it was so natural too. But now you're like, well, right and wrong, lots of gray areas. And, life is complicated, more complicated than that. Why? Well, the nature of the work that we do and the business that we do, there's so much, gray areas. And so ask yourself, is the workplace and the relationships and the exposure and education, is it getting me to become more permissive? Taking more licensing? And there's a difference between becoming more understanding that life is complicated, people have different perspectives and biases and all of that. That's fine, difference of opinion. But is it making me more permissive? Is it muting my moral compass? Because the Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, he defines sin, al-ithmu ma haka fi sadri wa karihta an yattali alayhi an-nas. Sin is what feels uncomfortable on the inside and you don't want anybody else seeing you do. So at the beginning, this thing was uncomfortable. Your fitrah didn't like it. But over time now, it's very comfortable. At the beginning, you didn't want people seeing you do this. But now you don't care what people think. Actually, now you define yourself by it. Right? Maybe at the beginning, you're like, you know what? This business deal, I don't want people to know that I'm engaging in this kind of business. It's not the best. But, inshallah, one day I'll get out of it. At the beginning, it was that. But now, you actually define yourself by it. They're just jealous because you can't make money. You need to have like a shrewd, rigid personality to make it in business, and I'm not going to change that. That is a part of the package. That is why I'm successful. It's like Qarun. إِنَّمَا أُوتِيتُهُ عَلَى عِلْمٍ عِنْدِي. What are you talking about? You coming to tell me to be better, to be more humble. Actually, it's that, because you keep saying humility, humility. Look where humility has taken you. Yeah, keep on being humble. We'll see where humility takes you. No. I did this out of my own knowledge. Me, I. إِنَّمَا أُوتِيتُهُ عَلَى عِلْمٍ عِنْدِي. I did this because of knowledge that I have. You don't have knowledge. I have knowledge. Don't tell me what to do. Look where your people have taken you. You and your Musa. What does he? He wants to show off his wealth. فَخَرَجَ عَلَى قَوْمِ فِي زِينَتِهِ. He takes all of his wealth and he wants to show it off, to show people, hey, look, this is what actually works. This mindset is why I was able to get all this money and gold. So they show off material wealth to rationalize or to justify their deep corruption. And they don't say it's corrupt anymore. They actually say that, no, you just misunderstood the game of life. This is not corruption. This is just good business tactics. This is not evil. This is necessary. It's part of the social contract. It's the unwritten code. And you need to learn to be like me in order to actually gain wealth and to be successful. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is reminding us, focus, reconnect to Allah, make that your focus. Reconnect with your natural intuitive state. لا تبديل لخلق الله. And this is so powerful. You know why this ayah is so powerful? لا تبديل لخلق الله. Let there be no change in the creation of Allah, or there is no change to the creation of Allah. Some of the ulama understood this to say that, you know what, despite how far you go, your natural state will never change. Somewhere deep inside, your fitrah is there, ready to be awakened. So you may silence it, you may force it down, you may make it almost inaudible, you may suffocate it, but deep inside, somewhere there, that fitrah is ready to be awakened the minute you decide to focus on Allah. Because there is no change to the creation of Allah. It's there. You just have to wake it up. You have to dust off the layers of sin and desire and corruption and bad choices. You have to. It's a journey. But deep inside, somewhere there will be that natural human innate goodness, commitment to justice, want and desire to connect with Allah that is there. لا تبديل لخلق الله. Some other commentators, they say that this is a command. Focus on Allah so that you remain in the way that Allah has commanded, because there should be no change to the creation of Allah. Allah created you in a specific way. It is your job to maintain and not to lose it. That's a command. So one, it's a descriptive statement, and the other is a commanding statement. ذلك الدين القيم ولكن أكثر الناس لا يعلمون. This is the upright, قيم. قيما ينذر بأسا شديد. It's standing. This is the way of life. If you actually commit to this way of life, it will remain standing. This will continue to make sense. This will continue to be relevant. This will continue to be the standard across all places and spaces. If you describe this to someone living in the caves or someone living in 2900, 900 years from now, it'll still be relevant. It'll still make sense. It'll remain standing. وَلَكِنَّ أَكْثَرَ النَّاسِ لَا يَعْلَمُونَ. Most people don't know. So, Ya Allah, I'm trying to wake up my fitrah. Okay, I realize through the signs, I believe you're there. I know that you have the power and I want to connect back to you. So, how do I do it? Munibina ilayhi. Munibin literally means to turn or to return. Munib means to turn, to focus, and also to return. Because imagine you're far and you're turning back. You're recalibrating. How do I recalibrate? How do I recalibrate? Allah gives you again these equations, these formulas in the Quran. They keep popping up over and over again. How do I turn back to Allah? You decide Allah is going to be my focus. Allah is going to be my focus. وَاتَّقُوهُ وَأَقِيمُوا الصَّلَاةَ وَلَا تَكُونُوا مِنَ الْمُشْرِكِينَ. Taqwa, prayer, sincerity. Taqwa, prayer, sincerity. Where do we get this? Literally here. وَاتَّقُوهُ وَأَقِيمُوا الصَّلَاةَ وَلَا تَكُونُوا مِنَ الْمُشْرِكِينَ. Do not commit shirk. Do not associate with Allah. What's the opposite of associating with Allah? You're not doing things for anybody but Allah. You're doing things for Allah. That's ikhlas. That's sincerity. So number one, Decide to focus on Allah, decide to turn, decide, okay, Ya Allah, I'm making it my focus. So in my dua, I'm asking Allah to wake me up. In my focus, in my prayers, in my anything that I do, I'm making Allah my focus. Before I make a business decision, before a relationship decision, before a career decision, yeah, is this good for my deen? Is this going to make me closer to Allah or further from you, Allah? Wattaqu, taqwa. Taqwa, constantly knowing that I'm being monitored by Allah. Everything that I do, it's the little decisions in my sleep, in my private life. Whenever I'm alone between me and Allah, I have this taqwa in mind. I know that Allah is present. I know that Allah is aware. Wa aqimus salah, prayer helps. Connect with Allah. That's your source of energy. Taqwa, prayer, sincerity. وَلَا تَكُونُوا مِنَ الْمُشْرِكِينَ. Whenever I do anything, Ya Allah, I'm not doing this for others. I'm not doing this to be seen. I'm not doing this to be noticed. I'm not doing this to be recognized. I'm not doing this for anything but you. And guess what happens? Guess what happens? When you do these things, you're going to be given guidance. It's going to come. But then there's another issue that comes. When you get that guidance, you begin to claim almost possession over it, that you disqualify anybody else. So let's say Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allowed you to get guidance through the door of, you lost a loved one, and in that loss of a loved one, your heart woke up, your fitrah woke up. So now you realize that through service and through being present with people who are sick, by socially being engaged, you have that clarity, you have that guidance. That's what spoke to you. Or someone became more guided through education, or someone became more guided through prayer, or someone became more guided through service to their parents, or someone became more guided through their political activism. Whatever that, you remember how we said all of these are signs at the very beginning? What were these signs? What did we say? The lightning, the heavens and the earth, your sleep, the way that you seek provision, the differences in your tongues. So studying sociology, studying biology, studying reproduction, studying patterns, studying all of these different ways that you can seek Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, find Allah, be connected to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, find that guidance. Unfortunately, what happens, people then begin to create sects, divisions, and they begin to be very possessive and proud over what they have in a way that disqualifies others. So the next, do not be like those who divided their faith and split into sects. وَلَا تَكُونُوا مِنَ الْمُشْرِكِينَ مِنَ الَّذِينَ فَرَّقُوا دِينَهُم. So what is mushrikeen here? This is the ones who are not sincere. They lost sincerity along the way. And because they lost their sincerity along the way, they don't make Allah number one. What do they start making? My shaykh becomes number one instead of Allah. Whatever my shaykh says. And their shaykh is wrong. Number one, whatever my group says, my interpretation is the best. My focus is the best. Meaning, we are a group that focuses on social activism. We are Muslims. If your focus is not social activism, you're not a proper Muslim. Our focus is education. If you're seeking education, great. If you're not, you're not. My focus is spirituality. As long as you're spiritual and you're Muslim. If you're not, you're gone. Even though Islam has all of these things in place, and these are all parts of Islam. So don't reduce Islam to one of its. It's like, imagine there's a pizza, and what you do is you take a slice. Allah has given you a slice of that pizza. That's your share of knowledge. Don't limit Islam to what your own experience is. Islam is greater than that slice. Islam is the whole. And don't be so possessive and protective. Yes, you are possessive over your guidance, but not in a way that disqualifies others. Not in a way that is divisive, not a way that is sectarian. كُلُّ حِزْبٍ بِمَا لَدَيْهِمْ فَرِحُونَ. Every group is proud and rejoices with what they have. With what they have. We are the best. And every group claims, we all claim, subhanAllah. We all have these claims that we are non-sectarian, we are inclusive, we respect differences of opinions. But you know what? You get into the nitty-gritty, the day-to-day encounters, and you see the opposite. So it's not a slogan. It has to actually be a lived experience. Look at your biases. Look at the way that we speak about one another sometimes. So avoid sectarianism, avoid division. Go back, make Allah your focus, make the Quran and Sunnah your focus. Right? through the understanding of yes, the correct scholarship, there's no doubt. But understand that it is there for unification, not for division. And in the Quran, Allah tells us, وَمَا تَفَرَّقَ الَّذِينَ أُوتُوا الْكِتَابَ إِلَّا مِن بَعْدِ مَا جَاءَتْهُمُ الْبَيِّنَةُ, that many of the people of the book began to divide only after the evidence came. Because when there was no revelation, they were all united under the common goal to get rid of Fir'aun. Once that was gone, now they began to divide. Well, who are we? What are we? Where are our... So in these discussions, don't make your discussions just based on a common enemy. Be firm and clear in your identity, yes, but also accommodate anybody that is within, or any interpretation or opinion within the realm of the Quran and the Sunnah. And the greatest example of this is Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam when he gave the command to the Muslims, we shall not pray Asr until we get to Bani Qurayza. A group understood this to be a command, and a group understood this to be a description. So some of them, they got to Bani Qurayza late, Maghrib, and they didn't pray Asr. So the Prophet says, don't pray until you get to Bani Qurayza. Another group says, no, what the Prophet meant, rush quickly, don't take too many breaks, so you get there at Asr, so we all pray Asr together. It's like when a leader says, we're going to pray Asr at the destination. What does that mean? It means well, something happened to you, you got delayed. Does that mean you're not going to pray Asr? So there was a difference of opinion. Some group took a break, prayed Asr, and then came. Another group went all the way and got there, Maghrib, but hadn't prayed Asr. When they came to Rasulullah, said, Ya Rasulullah, which of us is correct? He said, both of you are correct. Because you tried to implement. Or both of your ijtihads are acceptable. But obviously the correct position, he affirmed both of their ijtihad, both of their deductive reasoning, but he says the ones who prayed Asr on time, of course, are more correct per se, but both are acceptable in the sight of Allah. And this is where we get the rule that when you do ijtihad and you get the answer correct, you get double the reward. If you do ijtihad and you get the answer incorrect, you get a single reward. You've done your best. And that's the way we look at things, anything. Moon fighting or moon sighting. Both opinions are what? Acceptable. One is more correct. But the one that is more correct is going to get double the reward. The one that is not as correct is going to get a single reward. But you can't take an incorrect opinion knowing it's incorrect. You got to take an opinion, no, this is the opinion that I believe in 100%. So you think it's correct, khalas, double the reward. If it's correct. You think it's correct, but it's incorrect, single reward at the end of the day. And anything else in the Quran and Sunnah like that. Right? Anything else. The opinion, whether you can say Bismillah on meat and eat right away or not. There's a correct opinion. In my eyes, I think in this society, we should only eat what's dhabiha. There are those who say, well, there are evidence for, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Just say Bismillah and eat. Both are acceptable. Right? Both are acceptable ijtihads. There's a lot of evidence for both. Obviously, I lean more towards one. Right? Inshallah, double the reward for that opinion. The other opinion, single reward. If you believe it to be 100% correct. And you take the opinion that it's valid. And anything else with this difference of opinion. Whether that is, the prayer time for Asr. The prayer time for Isha. The angle that you use for Fajr to calculate the times in the North American diaspora context. Right? Political engagement strategies, disengagement. All of these things, there are perspectives. Right? There are perspectives. And inshallah, you're rewarded either way. Now, we talked about how pride and sectarianism, my people, my sheikh, this is the way we do things, my hizb, pride, arrogance. How do we overcome the arrogance? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions an example. وَإِذَا مَسَّ النَّاسَ ضُرٌّ دَعَوْا رَبَّهُمْ مُنِيبِينَ إِلَيْهِ. When people are afflicted with pain or harm, that's when they call on to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with full devotion. So you want to know what sincerity looks like? You want to taste sincerity? Sincerity is actualized when a person is a moment of absolute desperation and the only person or the only being, the only focus then that they turn to is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. ثم إذا أذاقهم منه رحمة إذا فريق منهم بربهم يشركون. But what happens? As soon as they taste the mercy of Allah, some will right away get distracted and focus on something else. They will start associating with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Even though they prayed and they were sincere, the minute they get what they want, they get distracted. So when we're desperate, we turn to Allah, Ya Allah, help me, help me, help me, help me. Then Allah gives us, but the things that Allah gives us become the reason that we get distracted and associate with Allah someone or something else. Right? Before you have the wealth, you're so desperate, Ya Allah, help me, help. Now that you have the wealth, your wealth becomes a distraction. Right now I have to protect this. Now people used to give more when they had no money. Now that they have money, like, well, I'm this close to getting this, and now they're actually giving less. So, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala then says, what happens to them when they get what they're looking for? لِيَكْفُرُوا بِمَا آتَيْنَاهُم. They become ungrateful for what Allah has given them. You'd imagine people used to pray more. They used to show up more. They used to give more. When they're in a moment of desperation, exam season, the loss of a loved one. You see the human being, subhanAllah, the example that comes to mind is just a few days ago, we prayed the janazah on a 6-year-old boy. He was in his car with his family, and the car had an accident. They were on the way to a skiing resort, and they had an accident, and the baby didn't make it. The 6-year-old boy didn't make it. May Allah give him Jannat al-Firdaus, Ya Rabbi, and give ease to his family. And subhanAllah, you see the whole their focus, they're in a different world, a completely different world. Right? They're in a different world. They're much, much more spiritually awakened than any of us can imagine. Because in that state, when you lose someone so beloved to you, that catastrophic shock sends almost like it's one of the biggest resets. It's like an absolute reset that moves you then to understanding how frail, how temporary the world is. It's a full awakening because you realize how small the world is. You take so much for granted. And then what that does is it forces you to actually look for stability. Where is this? Where is then stability? And then where do you find stability? In Allah. In Allah. You find stability in Allah. So most of us, we have the sincerest. You're looking for sincerity. You're most sincere. You're most real. You're most submissive. You're most Muslim. You're most fullest in your Islam and your submission to Allah in moments of difficulty, challenge, and catastrophe. That's when you're most focused. That's when you're most sincere. So hold on to that feeling. Right? And if you're able to hold on to that feeling, hold on to that state when you're there, and memorize that state, and hold on to that state even when things are great, then you're able to have that state of sincerity even when you have mountains of blessings. But most people can't. Most people have a transactional connection with Allah. When they're desperate, they're good, and the minute they have it all, they get distracted. They forget that state. And they get lost in the blessings. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, لِيَكْفُرُوا بِمَا آتَيْنَاهُم. They become ungrateful for whatever favors we've given them. فَتَمَتَّعُوا. So go ahead, enjoy. Enjoy. فَسَوْفَ تَعْلَمُونَ. Enjoy, but soon you will know. أَمْ أَنزَلْنَا عَلَيْهِمْ سُلْطَانًا فَهُوَ يَتَكَلَّمُ بِمَا كَانُوا بِهِ يُشْرِكُونَ. Where's your evidence? Most people have decisions that they take or positions that they have. So Allah asked the question, okay, you say you do this, you say this is who you are, you say this is your position, you say we are this group because of your pride, your sectarianism, your positionality. Then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala asks, where is your authority? That claim that you have to worship this or to believe in this, where is the evidence? Hatu burhanakum. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is giving us one of the criteria to stay sincere. Stop getting into the cycle of, I do this because it makes sense, I do this because it's intuitive, or I do this because it's just the way things are. Always go back and ask yourself, is there a sultan? Is there evidence for this? So Muslims are evidence-based practitioners. Where the evidence is, we go with the evidence. Right? I'm not living life just based on my feelings, my whims, my desires. I feel like it. This makes sense to me. I think this. I feel this. This makes me happy. That's not how we live. We're an evidence-based community. We're a textual-based community. Yes, intuition has its place. Evidence takes us to Allah, but evidence doesn't make us appreciate Allah. Evidence takes us to Allah. Intuition allows us to experience Allah. But intuition, or let's say the sense of let's say my compass, can't always be trusted, but because our compass can be what? Can be in need of calibration. So focus on the evidence. The evidence wakes your compass, resets your compass, which then allows you to do what? Allows you to know Allah, to feel Allah, to experience Allah, to taste your relationship with Allah genuinely. But we're an evidence-based, textual-based community. Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam made that clear. I left with you the Quran and the Sunnah. Here's the Quran, here's my lived experience. Hold on to that. As long as you hold on to that, you will not be misguided. لَن تَضِلُّوا بَعْدِ أَبَدًا. So go back to the basics. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, وَاعْتَصِمُوا بِحَبْلِ اللَّهِ جَمِيعًا وَلَا تَفَرَّقُوا. Hold on to the rope that is suspended from above and do not be divided. So again, where is your evidence? Don't get lost in the blessings. Go back to the evidence. You know what happens? Sometimes people will say all kinds of things. And they will feel them and they will mean them. Like you hear someone say, you know what? Allah must be really happy with me because you know what? Because I have, $1 billion in my bank account. I built this amazing business and I built that amazing business. And you tell them, but you built your business selling alcohol. But if Allah meant for me to not sell alcohol, Allah would have stopped me. But Allah made it possible. I'm selling alcohol. Maybe alcohol is not that bad. And there's evidence for this and that. And alcohol was prohibited in phases. So maybe it's just one of those. And we're here in a non-Muslim context, in a sport context. Things are less. It's more. And then what are you saying? Where's your evidence? There's a clear verse in the Quran. Don't tell me intuition. I built a business. I made this. I made that. Where's the evidence? Right? So don't let the experience take you away from the clear facts. If Allah willed, I would not have built my, businesses. I have 15 businesses. They're all on the riba. They're all on business loans, interest-based loans. Right? They're all on debt. And you're saying, I'm blessed. Are you really blessed? Look at the evidence. يَمْحَقُ اللَّهُ الرِّبَا وَيُرْبُ الصَّدَقَاتِ. فَأَذَنُوا بِحَرْبٍ مِّنَ اللَّهِ وَرَسُولِهِ. The evidence is so clear that this is wrong. But you let your experience, subhanAllah, distract you, derail you away from clear foundational evidence, and it almost subdues the internal state of the fitrah. These are examples. And others, someone says, my relationship, it's not the best, it's not the most ideal, but, alhamdulillah, we really love each other, we are this, get married. No, it's okay, we don't believe in the social contract. It's the same anyway, we have the same level of commitment that we would do as a husband and wife. It's fine, it's fine. We're in a, cohabit relationship. What is this? And people begin then to, right? And we don't say that in a judgmental way. We say that in an encouraging way. That we should all go back and visit our assumptions. Visit the things that we claim about life and how life works. And go back to the evidence. وَإِذَا أَذَقْنَا النَّاسَ رَحْمَةً فَرِحُوا بِهَا وَإِن تُصِبْهُمْ سَيِّئَةٌ بِمَا قَدَّمَتْ أَيْدِيهِمْ إِذَا هُمْ يَقْنَطُونَ. And how do we know? How do you know that you are actually still not there yet in terms of sincerity? How do you know when you're in a state of transactional connection with Allah, not a state of a genuine relationship with Allah? When you taste mercy, you become proud. And when you're afflicted with evil, you fall into despair. Meaning what? Meaning that even when I experience the best of blessings as a Muslim, I'm not really like, okay, great. I have $10 million, $10 billion. It's not about what I have. It's about what I do with it. It's about how I acquire the state of being while I have it and the kind of person that I become. That's my focus. I'm not proud. It's just, alhamdulillah, great. My test was a test of poverty. Now it's a test of provision and blessings. But they're both tests. I'm still writing a test. When I fall, a catastrophe happens. I'm still saying alhamdulillah. Allah gives and Allah takes. This is a test and that is a test. So when your focus is Allah, you don't become proud when you have. You don't become full of despair when you lose. You're always grounded on Allah. Allah gave me, so I'm going to use it to be grateful. Allah took, so I'm still going to use it to be grateful, to be reflective. So that's how you know you're sincere. It doesn't matter when you have, when you don't have, what you lose, what you give. Your focus is on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So all of it anchors you back in your relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. May Allah give us that level of sincerity, Ya Rabb. Ameen, ameen. And finally, the final verse we're going to look at today. أَوَلَمْ يَرَوْا أن الله يبسط الرزق لمن يشاء ويقدر إن في ذلك لآيات لقوم يؤمنون. Do they not see that Allah is the one who gives in abundance or limits provisions however and to whomever He wills? This is indeed a sign. These are all signs for the people of belief. So don't start thinking, I am good because of what I have, or I'm not good because of what I don't have. Allah is the one who gives, Allah is the one who takes. Don't assume you're amazing and attribute success to yourself based on your possessiveness and your possessions. It's not. We don't value ourselves based on what we have. And we say that, but people do. I don't want to be seen driving this car. Why? Because it's going to be disrespectful. People are not going to take me seriously. I don't want to be seen, I don't want you wearing this. I want you to be wearing that because I want people to take us seriously. Right? And we have these, subhanAllah, social constructions in place. Yes, a Muslim should look good. Yes, a Muslim should, whenever Allah's blessings are there, show the blessings of Allah. That's fine. But don't derive a sense of self-worth based on what you're wearing, what you're driving, your degree, your certificate. And don't derive a sense of moral worth based on what you have. Allah must be good and happy with me because I have this. No, doesn't mean anything. Fir'aun had so much power. Does that mean he's a great guy? Qarun had so much power. Does that mean he's a great guy? Ad and Thamud had incredible sophisticated structures built. Does that mean they were good people? The people of Musa, many of them died. The magicians that became Muslim and converted, they were killed. Now you tell me, someone who lost everything they had and was killed, was martyred, from a material point of view, from a dunya point of view, they had nothing. They gave everything up. But in the sight of Allah, they're the most incredible because of the currency of faith. So the currency with Allah is not possession materially. The currency with Allah is taqwa. Inna akramakum indallahi atqakum. Right? يوم لا ينفع مال ولا بنون إلا من أتى الله بقلب سليم. The day that no wealth will benefit, no children will benefit. What matters is you come into Allah with a sound state of heart. A sound heart in having ikhlas and sincerity in the way that you worship Allah, and a sound heart in the way that you dealt with people. Both. You had a good relationship with Allah, you understood Allah well, and you had a good relationship with people. You understood and navigated those contracts socially with people well. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala forgive all of us, Ya Rabb, Ameen. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make us people of the Quran, Ya Rabb, Ameen. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allow us to benefit through the Quran and to benefit others through the Quran. Inshallah, we will take a break here. We'll see you next week. And inshallah, after Salat al-Dhuhr, we do have a janazah. Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un. عظم الله أجركم.